automatically. So now we are starting to record. So welcome again, everybody. And we will right into having Elizabeth talk to us. I'm real excited about the things that Elizabeth has been doing. So real shortly, the title of Elizabeth's talk is EVs for All, No More Excuses. So we want to really get them in the hands of as many people, not only in this country, but all around the world as we can. And as we know, kind of vehicles, a lot of vehicles start out expensive and only available to those who can afford them. And then over time, things drop in price and we're able to get a bigger percentage of the population driving EVs. So it's real exciting. So Elizabeth Spike is from Virginia, where she volunteers with Breathe DC, a community health organization that promotes healthy lifestyles and prevents lung disease throughout the District of Columbia, especially in communities affected by health disparities. And we have some of those kind of communities around Houston as well, too. So it's really important, of course, to clean up the air wherever we can. Elizabeth is the former chair of the Houston Regional Group of the Sierra Club and steering committee of the Houston Climate Movement. She's also a former EE360 community fellow with the North American Association for Environmental Education and brought low-cost portable air sensors to teachers in Virginia, DC, and Maryland. And tonight she's going to share her efforts to collaborate with Breathe DC to support the just transition of electric vehicle mobility and infrastructure in low-income communities. So without further ado, Elizabeth, turn it over to you and you can share your screen or I can do the slide deck from here, either way.
Hello.
Hello, yep, I see slides coming up.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. I wanted to turn off the video so we can focus on the slides. I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to go into present mode. Okay. Can you all see the screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Good. Okay. So first of all, thank you to Houston Electric Auto Association, especially Robert Sanchez, who sends me emails and keeps me up to date of all the things that are going on in terms of greenhouse gases and the transition to low carbon or zero carbon future. So thank you, Robert, for getting this going and allowing me to speak. And I just want to say hi to Meredith. I saw her name and I'm glad that she's here. She was on the steering committee, Houston Climate Movement with me and the Sierra Club. So it's really great to talk to Houstonians and folks from Hawaii and New Jersey and all over the place about this very important topic. Before I get into my talk, I just want to acknowledge how I send, my regrets to what happened to Texas just recently. Devastating. And I'm sure that there are some families, some residents who are still trying to recover from no power, no water. And I really hope that something good can come out of this and perhaps people learn lessons and people lose jobs and they get replaced by smarter people who actually act on behalf of the public good. So enough of that. I'm an alternative school teacher. I teach science and health and I'm in Fairfax County. That's about 10 miles west of the District of Columbia. I met Breathe DC a couple of years ago when I moved up to Northern Virginia. We partnered together on my project called Our Air, Your Future, Creating Clean Air Advocates. And I wanted to work with Breathe DC because they're in the district and they serve all 8 wards of the district, especially communities affected by health disparities. And they do a number of excellent things for residents. They provide educational opportunities for youth in a summer camp where children learn how to identify the triggers of asthma and how to manage their chronic condition. They do home visit programs where they go into homes and they help identify the triggers for asthma in homes all across the district. They coordinate with landowners and landlords and property owners to provide smoke-free places for all residents. They're working with pregnant moms. They have smoking cessation programs. And just before I landed in Northern Virginia from Houston, they were expanding their community lung health programs to environmental health. So they were working with a community in Buzzards Point, which is at the confluence of the Potomac and Anacostia rivers. This is a neighborhood that is experiencing intense gentrification, has highways and freight rail and light rail, and it has it's right there next to the waterfront where you have boats of all kinds passing through, and a new stadium, and so these folks are just bombarded with dust, and so Breathe DC reached out to them and helped coordinate clean linens and so on. So they do an amazing amount of education and programming. They also do a good deal of advocacy to enact smoke-free places, et cetera. So I'm very proud to be working with them. So let me jump into our latest challenge. We are beginning a journey where we're exploring how to help low-income communities have equitable access to electric vehicles and electric vehicle infrastructure. So it starts with environmental justice, which teaches us that no one population should have an undue burden of pollution. And so there are pockets of populations all across the country, all across the world that are targeted by dirty, polluting development. And they're going to be harmed the most, even though they've contributed the least to this kind of development. And the latest challenge is a warming climate. So the Green New Deal espouses environmental justice, and it guides us to support the just transition to clean energy so that these populations that we have targeted for decades, now that they've been targeted, they become marginalized communities, and they can benefit from electric vehicle access and infrastructure. So I want to talk to you about some of the threats and risks, and here we are. This is the Keeling curve. I just grabbed this screenshot the other day. We're at 416 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and I assume that will continue growing. Even with the pause the pandemic has caused in terms of greenhouse gas emissions from travel and so on, I think it will still continue growing. And that's a problem because we're going to keep on driving, right? Like, I don't see anybody giving up their cars anytime soon. And so I think electric vehicles can be part of the solution to this greenhouse gas emission problem that we continue to cause. I am on Fairfax County's community-wide energy and climate action plan. I'm on their transportation working group, and we put out a survey, and from that survey, the results came back where folks are not going to give up their cars, and they're not very much interested in public transit because, and for various reasons, they find it inadequate. So I know it's going to take more than electric cars, and public transit is a must, but in the meantime, transportation is 28% of our greenhouse gas emissions. That's a problem. Greenhouse gas emissions in the DC area are going to cause more extreme weather. So we're going to have more extreme heat days. Our baseline's on the left. We have 11 days, and that's the low emission scenario. And in the 2020s, we're ranging anywhere from 18 to 20. Fast forward to mid-century, 30 to 45 days. And the latter part of the century, we're going to have 40 to 75 days, depending on when we start putting the brakes on carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So that's a threat that will be borne by the least affluent in our neighborhoods. With the greenhouse gases comes a warmer and wetter climate. So we're going to see greater frequency and intensity of precipitation. Just like Houston, we're going to have flooding events that are going to increase sixfold by the end of this century because of these greenhouse gases keeping our climate warmer and moister. So again, they're going to be lower income, under-resourced communities who are going to bear the brunt of trying to clean up and rebuild. Along those lines comes sea level rise. In the lower right box, you have 3 different colors of blue, category 1, 2, and 3. And you can see the impact that sea level rise will have on the coastlines there. It looks like, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but it looks like there's like a canal, worst case scenario, canal cutting through downtown. So
the cursor shows as you move.
yeah, okay, very good. So you can see all along here, this is going to have major economic impacts, right? So we're expecting 3 to 4 more feet of sea level by 2080, according to the Army Corps of Engineers. This was July 2019. It was spectacular. The picture on the right, you know, that's a metro station. So, you know, this is the reality that we're living with. So climate change is happening, and you are
water going in there.
Sorry.
It's kind of hard to see what is exactly happening in the metro.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you for telling me. All right, so that's the platform.
If it has a post in the middle, or if that's
no, that's water coming down. That is a waterfall from above. So there's so much water, and this metro station, the ceiling is leaking, and all that water is coming down. So if you are taking metro to get around, like many DC residents do, you know, that is a problem for you, because
I think they had to shut off the power because the trains are powered from the tracks, and if you have water, you would shorten it. So they had to, you know, shut off the power, right? Is
yes.
that so?
I believe that those are electric trains, yes, because there's a rail that you don't want to touch, so you don't want to come in contact with the rails, and I assume that is exactly why. Yeah, I mean, I just found this like this is reality, right? This is what greenhouse gases can do. These are the consequences, and if you are if metro is your only way of getting around, right? Then you're not going to get around when it looks like that. And that can happen more and more often because we have aging infrastructure.
Yeah, now that I understand it, that is shocking. I don't know. I thought it was a post or something when I first looked at it.
No, that's water.
It's so big, I didn't expect.
And there are cities in the world that have a subway even deeper. And when they have flood, I mean, the whole tunnel is filled with water, the whole tunnel. I remember there was a flood in Prague because I come from Czech Republic. It was flooded. The whole thing was flooded.
Yeah, that's devastating. That's really shocking. So I'm hopeful that this week, President Biden's announcement of a $2 trillion infrastructure plan goes through, and we can upgrade and rebuild and rethink, reimagine the way we get around and how we get around and who gets around. So I hope we never have to see that kind of flooding again. But
yeah, that definitely looks like it's something that needs fixing. And I'd also like just to make a comment to everyone. The chat is available. If you're thinking of questions while Elizabeth is talking, feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll cover them when we have our Q&A time period.
Okay, great. All right, well then I'll go ahead and move on to the next threat. The next threat is air pollution, and I'm going to focus on 2 criteria air pollutants, ozone and particulates. Here we see a picture of the United States, the 48 states, sorry, Hawaii and Alaska. But anyway, we're looking at what are called the non-attainment areas for the 2015 ozone standard. And so anywhere you see blue is marginal. So that's marginal non-attainment. Non-attainment means that they didn't quite make it. They exceeded the allowable amounts of ozone. This falls under the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. There are 2 standards, primary and secondary. Primary standards address human health impacts, and secondary address environmental impacts like visibility, crops, buildings, wildlife, that sort of thing. So what we're looking at here are areas around the United States that do not meet that ozone standard. And for the most part, many of them are blue. Washington, D.C., the metro area is non-attainment for ozone. What's very disturbing is the Central Valley of California. That is extreme non-attainment. So their ozone levels are really bad. And you can chalk that up to low humidity and a lot of sunshine and their topography and the way the weather works in that part of the country. Non-attainment is based on regional averages, and ozone is a natural phenomenon, and humans exacerbate natural ozone. It is photochemical, and that means it is related to the sun, and it's also impacted by weather. Down below is the recipe for making smog, which is a component of ozone. And so NOx is going to come from your combustion sources. VOCs are volatile organic compounds, and they come from, like, let's say, benzene in your gasoline and acetone and anything that's a hydrocarbon that evaporates very easily. So a very simple example would be if you opened up a container and you smelled the contents, then it's a volatile organic compound. The other criteria air pollutant is particulate matter. We're going to focus on the fine particulate matter. That's the 2.5 microns. So it's very small. It's the solids and liquids that can get deep inside your lungs, and more scientific evidence is suggesting or demonstrating that it can pass through the bloodstream, pass through into the bloodstream and perhaps to your brain. So it's going to have harmful effects on your lungs, hearts, brains, and ozone is no picnic either. So that's not good for human health. I have no reason to believe that there's any minimal amount of ozone that you need to maintain good health. So both of these are hazards and caused by combustion.
I'm just jumping into it. I see that it's from 2012, right?
Yes.
I think that the map would most likely look different today.
I
see that there is nothing in New Jersey, and we do have particulate matter in New Jersey.
Right. No, that's the 2012 standard. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I want to talk about particulate standards when I get to how does the Clean Air Act protect our health. I will get to that. That's 2012 means that was the standard put in place for back in 2012. In other words, every so many years, I'll talk about it now, every so many years, scientists get together and they work with a clean air science committee, and they share their research and they talk about what they have learned, how air pollutants affect human health. And then there's a review that takes place with the science committee, and they outsource some of their review to experts in particulates, for example. And just recently, the Pruitt, I believe it was the Pruitt EPA, disbanded, I'll just go to this slide right here, the Clean Air Act Science Advisory Committee, and replaced it with state and industry, industrial professionals and state regulators. So the previous committee, they got the boot. So there's that. And then when they were asked to comment on the standards for particulates, like, are they good or should we make them stronger? They basically told the EPA administrator, we're not qualified. You need to get more people with a deeper and broader set of knowledge about how to address these standards and how to make them protect the public good. Furthermore, I think it was the Wheeler administration that completely disbanded the particulate matter review panel. So there was nobody going up to bat for the public about particulate matter specifically. And what happened was that those scientists that were originally on the panel got together anyway at the offices of the Union of Concerned Scientists in Arlington about 2 years ago, or maybe a year ago, and they had their own review. And you can find all of that on Union of Concerned Scientists website. And it's very easy to find. It's all available. So they went ahead and they had their own review. And I think what they wanted to say was that this 2012 standard needs to change. In other words, we need to make it stronger, because over time, science research gets better and it tells us more, and it's getting, its tools are sharper, and it's the evidence becomes more and more clear that it's very hard to dismiss it. And so that has to be taken into consideration when they evaluate the current standards. So
Yeah.
that's supposed to happen regularly.
Elizabeth, and just yesterday or 2 days ago, the current administrator for EPA, he did dissolve that committee that was appointed by Trump. So it's gone. And now they're going to fill them up by the real scientists again.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's promising. Absolutely. And I believe this process has worked for decades, right? So the Clean Air Act is a success story. If I go back to this slide, actually right here, this slide right here, the Clean Air Act is a total success story. We don't have to pick between the economy and a clean, safe environment. We have driven down these criteria air pollutants over several decades, and we've done it while growing our economy. What I have here in this black box, I'm addressing the uptick. According to this slide, there's an uptick in certain criteria air pollutants. So the ones that I'm most concerned with would be ozone and fine particulates. But you'll also notice that coarse particulates, PM10, are also climbing according to this graph. These are averages. And so that's very good on average that we have reduced those air pollutants. However, an average means that there are pockets of people out there that are breathing more polluted air than the average. So that's what I'm mostly concerned with, those kinds of threats. I addressed this slide, so I'm going to go right past it. EVs produce no emissions that contribute to greenhouse gases or air pollution when working. And EVs are quiet and require less lifetime maintenance. So I think that marginalized communities would greatly benefit from having quiet, safe, and inexpensive over the lifetime vehicle to drive that does not contribute to greenhouse gases nor air pollution. That all happens at the point source. And that's where we should be focusing our fight, at the point source, because it's an opportunity to start regulating utilities for the carbon that they produce, as well as encourage and incentivize distributed solar. So that you can plug in your car and you can charge it without ever having to emit carbon while working. Let me tell you a little bit about who I'm working with. This is Washington, D.C. There are 8 wards. There's almost 750,000 people living in DC. About 80,000 live in Ward 8. That's in the lower section there of Washington, DC. It's Southeast DC. It's experiencing a population increase in the last 10 years, and I believe that will continue because land values are pretty inexpensive and the area is experiencing gentrification, like many other of the wards over here, 5, 6, 7, and 8, that are predominantly African-American. If you compare the walk score on the right, this is where Breathe DC is located in Ward 8, to the walk score on the left, that's downtown DC. You'll see that in every category, we're much lower. We are, Ward 8 is car dependent, whereas downtown is a walker's paradise. Now, there are probably many reasons for this, but if you are car dependent, then that tells you that you can't walk to many things within 1 mile, according to the walk score index. They do have good transit, but to the best of my knowledge, none of the buses are electric. I think some are those diesel electric hybrids and some are CNG, but none of them are electric. That is to come. There's an EV charging station desert, in my opinion, in that red rectangle. We're looking at both Ward 7 and 8. And part of Ward 8 is military. So the rest of it is, there are no charging stations. I found another site, the government site, where you can look up charging stations. I found one down here and maybe one over here. But when you compare that to Washington, DC, Arlington, Alexandria, it's night and day. So Ward 8 is not very walkable and it's an EV charging station desert. Who lives in Ward 8? It's mostly African-American. 1 out of 3 are below the poverty line. They experience many health disparities. They have higher rates of tobacco smoking, second and third hand smoke exposure. So they have a lot of other threats, not just environmental, but there are health threats, and there are also institutional and social threats. Like access to healthcare shouldn't be a challenge in a developed country, but it is. In terms of income and asthma, they have the lowest median household incomes in the city, 37,000 versus 86 for DC. And they have about 30% more higher rate of asthma in their adults than nationally, according to the CDC. This is a graph that's for all of DC, not just Ward 8. I wasn't able to separate that, filter that out. So in all of DC, I find this really interesting. About a decade's worth of data, just about every population has enjoyed an increase in life expectancy, except for one, Latino. So that's a red flag. I don't understand what's going on there, but they have all increased their lifespan. When you take a look at the average in purple, 73 increased to 77, that's fantastic. But at the bottom are always African Americans. So they're always about 10 years behind their white counterparts. So what is that? That's definitely disturbing and a red flag. Exposure to air pollution, again, this is all of DC filtered out for just African American people. They are ranked 82 in terms of air pollution exposure. That's not good. Alabama is number 1. Wyoming is down at the bottom, number 4. And when I did a quick report for an EJ screen for Ward 8, these are the percentiles for fine particulates, ozone, diesel, cancer risk, respiratory hazard risk, and so on and so forth. So these percentiles are not good. They're on the higher side. Residents of Ward 8 experience environmental and health disparities, and I believe that EVs can play a role in reducing the chronic exposure to air pollution. So how can we do that? And how can EV associations help out? So I won't read each section, but I am going to name them. And I'm hoping that maybe in the Q&A, we can do like a brainstorming session, and you can help me think of other ways. We can all speak up. We can all raise awareness. We can all talk to one another. We can build partnerships between all kinds of stakeholders, public and private, and we can press for change. I said earlier that the buses, there will be some electric vehicle buses in Washington. So WMATA is our bus service in Washington, DC. And so it's good timing. We need to overcome this inertia, and we need to take advantage of this opportunity and push for change as hard as we possibly can. We should support the Green New Deal. We should at least get behind the environmental justice efforts to stop historic and current environmental and social harm imposed on targeted and marginalized communities. I think we should have a new cash for clunkers, and it should be for new or used EV. You should trade in your gas car and get some kind of support for an EV. And just coincidentally, I read that state of Virginia, the legislators passed, it has to be signed by Governor Northam, that there will be a tax credit for new or used EVs. Now they have to put the money in the pot for that, but that's a start. And then lastly, I think we should have transparency and accountability that EVs are delivering on the promise for cleaner air. So we need to continue and press for increased air monitoring. And with that, I will stop there, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
All right, folks, you can either ask live, or you can also, if you want to, put it in the chat, if it's something like here. And I'll start off, though, by asking you about the electric buses. Have you heard if Washington, D.C. actually has something going on to get some electric buses there? Because we've talked in our previous meetings here. We meet every month. And we've heard about, we've had speakers from one of the electric bus companies, and we've heard about cities all around the country that are going toward electric buses. Do you have any specifics, or?
I don't. And pulling this all together to try to find out where are we in terms of electric vehicles for lower income residents, I discovered that WMATA they're just rolling this out, just like in Virginia. They're just now rolling out electric school buses. It's just all very early and in its infancy. So I can't give you details. I can direct you to a site with maybe more details, but I don't know them off the top of my head.
Okay. And I see in the chat, someone asks, is this something that can be replicated here in Houston?
Yes, I think so. Lots of drivers in Houston. You know, DC is heavy with congestion. Houston is heavy with congestion. I think it's coming. I am totally confident that this is going to happen. I mean, we need to have the charging stations. We need to help people who live in multifamily units, apartment buildings, condos. We need to bust these HOAs that won't let folks charge their car in their condo townhouse complexes. Here in Northern Virginia, I don't know why, but there are a lot of townhomes that do not have garages. In Houston, many places have garages, 2-car garages. So that's a no-brainer. But what do you do if you want to have an electric vehicle and you have no choice but to string your charger across the sidewalk? You can't do that. It's just, you can't do that.
Right. Yeah, we've all heard stories of people running extension cords out of apartment windows on the 3rd floor down to their car parked below. Yeah.
Right. Or through trees. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so Robert writes, would it behoove us in the short run to embrace less than fully electric options to get to a better, cleaner place? Natural gas buses, propane buses, cleaner ICE vehicles for cash for clunkers, etc.
Well, I think you'd want to improve your gas mileage, but you know, does that just kick the can further down the road? I mean, I don't have a good answer for that. I guess that's what we take if that's all we get, but let's have higher aspirations.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes to the debate. Some people say that plug-in hybrids are good, and some people say that plug-in hybrids are not good. And it's kind of in between, and I think most of us probably know the characteristics, so I won't go into that. But you can argue it either way, that with the state of battery electric vehicles, they don't meet everyone's needs. There's somebody, they drive once a month, but when they drive 600 miles, you know, with diapers on or something, you know, because that's just the way they have to work. Mm-hmm. And so for them, maybe a plug-in hybrid would work because the current battery electrics wouldn't. And other people say that, nope, we should go straight to full battery electrics and not. And so there's others, you know, natural gas buses. So they don't have the particulates that diesel do, but they're certainly cheaper to obtain. Maybe not in total operating, because the total operating of an electric bus is cheaper, of course, than something that has an engine in it. But right. A natural gas bus would be cheaper for some district to buy and replace, because generally they have, you know, large numbers of buses. It's not just one bus or something. And so that's why that debate, I think, is out there. So I see Nanette has written, in Hawaii, EV owners have the stigma of being rich. Promoting used EVs is a necessary step to promote equity for EV owners. Yeah,
I see a lot of Teslas around here. And it drives me nuts when I go to a charging station and there's a Tesla in there and I think, are you kidding me? You can afford a Tesla. You can certainly afford the electricity. I drive a Leaf with 10 capacity bars. I'm down 2, you know. So yeah, I can totally see that. So we should bust that. I think everybody, I mean, people need to get to places. This is the way we've built our world. You know, we've made it very complicated for people. We need better land use so that we don't have to work 15 miles from, you know, or live 15 miles from our jobs. And so it's very complicated, but I would say we've got to push really hard. I'm not the first to advocate for EVs. I just found a group in Oakland, California called Greenlining Institute. I will put it in the chat and you can all look it up. I'm also, thanks to Robert, I'm going to get in touch with Grid Alternatives. believe it's called Green Lining Institute. And I'm going to talk about their initiatives out in California and just compare notes and see, you know, how do we push for this? How do we make this a reality? There's an education piece to it. And there's got to be some kind of public-private investment. There's got to be some way to change these EV charging station deserts into something where folks see the possibility of where they can charge their cars.
Right. We often hear that it's beginning to switch from a range anxiety problem to a charging problem. People need to be able to know that they can charge before they're going to buy, as you've mentioned, particularly people in apartments and so forth. And, of course, it doesn't make sense for someone to buy a vehicle that doesn't meet their needs, that they can't fuel up.
Exactly. I think if public transit works, by all means, support public transit. And now more than ever, their ridership is down because of the pandemic. You know, that would be a disaster if public transit began to crumble and fizzle away because of low ridership.
Right. And we've kind of seen, and some people are predicting that things may have changed on a permanent basis, not just for temporarily for COVID, that more people have switched to vehicles as opposed to public transit at first because of the need to avoid coming in contact with
Right.
the disease. But then second, more folks are remote working, and that's going to cause people to move out of urban areas. You know, people, I think it would be ideal to be able to just walk, you know, several blocks from where I live to where I work. I've even kind of thought in the past, it would be nice to have a stint at NASA headquarters or something like that, because, you know, I've heard of other people. I mean, it's expensive, so you do it maybe for a year or something, but that would be ideal, and not have a car. But what we've seen with people going to remote work is to be more outside of cities, which means they are more car dependent.
Dave, I can say that in New York City, that has happened, exactly what you are saying about people moving from public transportation to cars. And as you can imagine, in New York City, they have not enough parking spots. And to find parking spot these days, or, you know, during the 2020, when people started to switching from public transit to cars, they started having parking rages. It's just unbelievable. It destroys the integrity of the society. And when the pandemic is over, they will be willing to get rid of those cars, and you know, they are going to flood the gas car market. It's lots of unfortunate things, you know, but the good thing is that when we talk about transportation, we need to think holistically, and Elizabeth touched to it very nicely. For the lower and middle income people, it's much better to electrify the buses, as long as there is public transportation. And New Jersey, I'm sure Elizabeth is aware of, we have very strong program. We also electrify school buses and New Jersey Transit, but there's also electric, you know, small bikes and scooters. That's also part of it. Now, of course, it's not universal, and again, it works only in cities, but it's a component of it. And what I want to say is that the bikes are compatible with pandemic. So, and they are very easy to park. They are very easy. If you can have foldable bike, even electric foldable bike. So this is another solution, and I think it should be highlighted. Yeah, and one more thing, Elizabeth, and it was, by the way, fantastic presentation. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed it. A big component of advocating for the electrification is really awareness. I mean, we cannot stress this more. We need to reach out to the communities, and we need to advocate not as the whites. We have to find the African Americans who already are the early adopters, and they need to talk. They need to say, hey, this is how I do it. This is how I solve the problem with charging. because many people in this category, they can already convert to electric, but they just find excuses. And so we need to have really strong awareness of this.
All right.
Those are good points. Thank
Thanks,
you for sharing.
Yep. And so I see now that we've got a comment here from Steve Barnes. Let me scoot up here back again now to his first comment. For those ICE owners that needed incentive, I would like to see the government pay to install EV charging and make charging free for, let's say, 10 years and sunset the free. If ICE owners, EV owners got free fuel, they might move to an EV while there's a great cost-effective reason to avoid paying for gas.
Yeah, that's an interesting proposition. You know, this is an opportunity where I think we need a new vision and we need to be creative. It could be piloted in some places, and maybe it would move to a state near you. I think that's a really clever way of doing that. I'm gonna jot that down. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, that's good. And it seems like I've heard a few sounds out of Washington, D.C. that maybe some funding will come for charging. Yeah, free, of course, is another thing. One aspect of free charging that I have heard, there's a group, I think they're based out in California, called Adopt a Charger. And what they've been doing is putting chargers in state parks in California. And I do believe that the charging at those is free. So the idea is to encourage someone, instead of bringing a car with a tailpipe into the state parks, where of course a lot of people go to enjoy the fresh air, rather that they would drive their EVs there knowing that they could charge. And through this Adopt a Charger program, they get sponsors to not only cover the installation costs, the land of course is the state park, so there's no land cost, but the installation costs, and then also, at least for a certain period of time, cover the electric bill, because yeah, that's just part of their design of their Adopt a Charger program. So maybe something along those lines could spread even farther. And as we all know, generally it's not the cost of the electricity, it's the cost of the installation. That's the big ticket item. And you know, electricity is a minor cost. So another Steve Hanrahan here in Houston, need to amend federal tax law to allow the EV tax credit to be used over multiple tax years. Yes, I think that would really help. And that addresses, as you say, trying to get lower income people, so folks that don't have such a big tax liability, the current type of a tax credit doesn't help them. Whereas if they could spread it out over 5 years or something like that, then they would be able to, you know, within their family, maybe justify buying an EV. Whereas without the ability to use the tax credit, they wouldn't be in a situation to do that. So.
When I registered my car here in the state of Virginia, I had to pay a little more than a gas car because I have an electric car and I'm not buying gasoline. So I had to pony up a little bit more money for driving on the Beltway, for example.
So like the registration for your car is higher, or is it?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how much. I mean, I could afford it, but again, if you are low income or lower income, you know, wealthy enough to be able to purchase a car, then you have to register it. Then you'll get socked with that fee.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the bills that's in front of the Texas legislature right now is to put a $100 additional fee on the yearly registration of EVs. And it's been pushed by the folks in the oil industry who are saying, hey, all these folks driving EVs are not paying the gasoline tax.
They have done it in Mississippi and West Virginia or some other state, and it tanked the EV sales. And the thing is, you know, and most of it, the argument is about the road tax, right? But the budgets for Department of, you know, transportation, local, it's broken not because of electric vehicles, but because the vehicles are in general are more efficient and people drive less. And most importantly, there is inflation and the cost of road repairs is going up, and they're just not able to to collect the money. So, you know, they collect a penny from the electric vehicle owners, and they are not fixing the budget. We were lucky here in New Jersey that we were able to persuade the legislators, and essentially the tax on gas went up. So that's how we fixed our budget for road repairs. But we know that at some point, electric vehicles will have to contribute with the road tax. It's inevitable, but it will probably change from fixed fee to mileage-based user fee. That's how they call it, mileage, MBUF.
Yeah, I've seen that proposition. I've also kind of wondered why they don't just put more of an excise tax on tires, because tires are pretty much used by EVs and ICE vehicles equally. And there, of course, you're actually rewarding someone for driving less per year, i.e. live closer to where you need to drive to, and you're going to use less tire wear. And so therefore you're paying less tire tax, and somebody who drives more, they're typically going to go through more tires. They're going to pay more. But I think it kind of shows that it's the oil industry that wants the extra fee on the EVs, because otherwise they would say, let's move it from a gas tax to a tire tax. But I've never heard anybody put that forward. I mean, I've seen it written down just in terms of, you know, it's doable, but I've never seen it show up in legislation. There's actually competing legislation now in Texas that would put a 200 or even bigger tax on EVs. And it's actually an EV sponsored group here that says, well, we're not trying to get out of paying the fair share that EV drivers should pay for roadway maintenance. And they've kind of figured that 100 is fair. The thing that I think should go in the mix, though, of course, is how much pollution the ICE vehicles are putting in the urban area.
Of course, right.
You know, and it's like, well, sure, let's put the $100 tax on the EVs, but let's also tax what really is happening from, you know, diesel particulates and things like that. But yeah, that doesn't fly because the strong lobbying by the oil industry. Okay, so another one from Steve Barnes. EVs are not a one size fits all. Cities, owners, or situations. As Stan was saying about New York City, parking is a really big issue, and that simply makes public transportation more realistic.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So from my experience with community organizing is that you will approach, you know, a problem that like I just can't walk into Ward 8 and say, this is what you're gonna do. So you wanna talk to the stakeholders and find out, well, what makes sense? And you need to meet them where they're at. And if they buy in, well, then obviously you go with the plan of electric vehicles. But in a dense city like New York City that has excellent public transit, I don't see why you would force it. I'm thinking of cities that are generally spread out, that like when I waited for the bus in Houston, we were talking, it was probably like 15 minutes between departure and arrival. You know, we want to shrink that. We want to make mass transit really convenient for car dependent cities so that they have a competitive alternative. But yeah, I think New York City is probably not, one more car would, you know, fighting over parking spots. It's not what I had in mind.
Right. So, and Steve Barnes also writes, free charging is useful for many, not just from a cost benefit, but it may often be the only place some people that live in high rises can charge. I charge at home, it's more convenient for me. I would not go sit for hours at a free charger to get free electricity if I can charge at home and do something at home. Yeah, that's often been brought up, folks. Yeah, a few cents of free electricity is really worth that much of your time. My point being, I'm not going to compete with people that need to charge in the wild just to get free charging.
Yeah, I was advising a friend of mine which Toyota car should she get. Should she get a plug-in hybrid or should she just get a hybrid? You know, she was like committed to that brand. So, but she would have to go across the street. It's a busy street, very busy, and it's got several lanes on each side, and this is just not an area that is terribly walkable. The streets are very windy. It's not really set up like a grid. I mean, I'm out in the suburbs, so it moves and functions very differently. So she'd have to cross this very busy road and leave her car there. And I don't know if, hopefully it's not a trickle charge, it's a faster charger and all that. And it was unappealing to her. And I understand that is not, we don't want that for people. We want to make it easy for them. And like I said, we shouldn't be making any excuses. Just make it easy. Just make it, bust those HOAs and find ways for condos and townhome associations and these high and mid-rise that install the chargers and make sure that they're only for EV cars and none of these gas cars sneaking in so they can have a parking spot.
Right. And I see Nanette has written down, we also need to be proactive and promote policy to require EV charger ready stalls for new developments. Yes.
Right. Yep, we can't keep doing business as usual. We've seen this experiment. It's not really working for us. Well, there's another way, and EVs haven't been out for that long in terms of, like mass sales. What, about a decade or so? So we need to strike while we can, while it's in its infancy, and normalize it. We have to normalize it because I think it is one of many solutions to the problem. And it also lifts people up. I mean, for someone who has to take the bus in the rain, maybe with a couple of kids and bags of groceries, or on a wheelchair, or maybe that's not the best example, but just having to schlep from one bus and do a transfer to another bus. I can't imagine the planning and the time and the effort that goes into that those of us who have access to cars and electric cars, it doesn't even register. We don't even appreciate who those people are. So we can change the way we've been doing things. I really believe that we can.
Yeah, and I think we need to think long term, just looking at the term at the end there of Nanette's comment, new developments. Generally, when housing is built, it lasts much longer than the lifetime of a single car. Housing can be built for 100-year or longer timeframes, and to build it with EV ready capabilities only makes sense. I mean, you already referred to these announcements by companies like GM that by 2035 all their vehicles are going to be electric, and so any housing that's built now should certainly be able to accommodate, even if the first 10 years that the building, multifamily or single family house stands, even if nothing gets plugged in, eventually it's going to be needed. And we all know it's much harder to run wiring in existing than just to run one extra line of copper when something's being built.
Yeah, so that's what we've been pushing for is, developers don't want to add any more cost to their development, but it's cheaper to put it in when you're building the building than after to retrofit it.
Yeah, yeah. You can bring that family member in on camera too.
Of course, they're quiet the whole time, but of course when I'm speaking.
Right.
Yeah, Murphy's Law. Yeah. But I'm trying to remember, and I know that you traveled to California. Did they make a law that some type of new construction not only is going to have solar, but also be EV charging ready?
They revised the electrical code on Oahu to include EV charger ready stalls. They tried doing one for the state, and the one thing is that you have to specify it to have at least level 2 versus just like some outlet. You could push for level 3, but that's probably not going to happen. So Oahu passed that ordinance last year. So it's in the electrical code now that has to be included. But they came up with this weird, the developers were fighting it. So they came up with this weird formula and point system. So it's pretty watered down. It's in there, but it's super watered down, and developers can find loopholes to kind of get around it, which is sad.
Yeah, it's sad that they're trying to save 5 cents, and yet some future homeowner, maybe not even the original purchaser, but some future homeowner is going to have a lot bigger expense to run some 240 wiring to a logical place. Yeah. All right. So, and I see we've gotten to 7:30 already. Wow. All right. We've been having so much fun here. I didn't even look because we do need to talk about some other things in our meeting here today. As I said, April 18th event and things like that. And so Elizabeth, thank you very, very much. This has been very eye-opening and glad to hear about the efforts going on in other places around the country. And yeah, as we all know, the more EVs on the road, the better off we all are. Whether they're conversion EVs, which of course is how our club started, folks taking gas burning vehicles that have had blown engines, and they've torn those out and put together their own vehicle that doesn't have a tailpipe. And then there's the folks that wouldn't think about doing that. That's fine for them. They're only interested in buying a vehicle. Now there's more choice than ever. And we expect in the very near future, even more choices. I've had folks talk to me and say, well, I need something like a minivan. And that was before the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid, which ironically is only called a hybrid. You have to know that it's really a plug-in hybrid. And so I pointed out after that was available on the market to that person and said, hey, you need a bigger vehicle? Maybe this one would meet your needs. And I always think of plug-in hybrids as dual fuel. So Elizabeth, you mentioned one person who was debating to buy one or not. Often they're more expensive. I think there's one model that I saw that was about the same price. But again, I think long-term into the future that even if where that person lived currently, they couldn't plug in a plug-in hybrid, I would still argue that, you know, it might be worth getting because there's going to be some place in the future where that vehicle could be plugged in and get more of the miles that it drives on electricity, even if, like you said, they've got a non-ideal situation. Yeah, there's lots of other places. You go to a supermarket that has a parking lot, and there might be a place there to plug in a plug-in hybrid, Toyota or any other brand. So that, yeah, that's what I always encourage people to do. Dual fuel gives you options. Yes, it costs a little more to have the options, but lots of other things in life you have to pay to have options too. So again, thank you, Elizabeth. And I see a couple other folks saying thank you there. And yeah, clapping on screen is a good way to recognize. All right. So you're welcome to stay on if you want to hear more about what we're going to talk about with our April plans. And I see Mo that you've come on there. So hi, Nanette. And so Mo, if you'd like to start us off on the topic of April 18th.
So it looks like COVID case numbers are down low where Discovery Green feels comfortable doing a socially distant Earth Day. It's not going to be as big as it has been in the past, but they're wondering if we want to bring EVs and do what we did in years prior. So I've been vaccinated and I'm considering it because we actually just bought one of those electrified minivans that plugs in. I got a 2021 Chrysler Pacifica a few weeks ago. So
you're a great man. I didn't even know that. And here I was talking about the practicality of that vehicle. Yeah.
It is. And I can share the link later, but someone posted this analysis that someone did on all the available vehicles and like which ones are the most cost efficient and carbon, low carbon emitting, and the Pacifica beat out the Sienna, which was at the top of my list. So I ended up going with that one because it was lower in cost and lower in carbon emissions. And I have a plug and I have a 2-car garage and it fits right in there. And the first 30 miles are all EV as long as I'm not pressing the gas pedal too hard. So it's been it's like a really smooth ride too. So yeah, I'm considering coming, but I need to discuss that with the wife. We have a newborn who was just born August of last year. So we're still got to take him into consideration. But if anyone else wants to sign up, I'll take your name down and we can powwow. It's going to be similar as in years past. The event's going to be like from noon till 5, but we got to be loaded in by about 10:30. So in between 9:30 and 10:30, people arrive, you park your vehicle, you can lock it up and go elsewhere. And then if you want to come back to any time between noon and 5 and do some EV evangelism, as Robert likes to say, then you can hang out at Discovery Green and do a socially distant petting zoo, EV petting zoo. So just, you know, if anyone wants to raise their hand or shoot me a message in the chat, I'll take your information down and we'll get you signed up. So details, I can also put that in the chat, a link, but just
I did
high
just,
level.
so Mo, what you sent in the email to me before the meeting, I just put in the chat. So it does have the discoverygreen.com/Earth Day link. And
Yep.
it mentions the date. It talks about Sunday noon, and I just typed in, you said that the loading of vehicles would be from 9:30 to 10:30. Because yeah, in the years that we've done this in the past, they don't want vehicles moving around during the open hours. So they do want people to come, and you have to promise to leave your vehicle there the entire time. And also the way we've done it before is as a line of cars, it'd be kind of hard to get a vehicle out unless you're the very first one anyway. So we are asking people to commit to the end. So I see you wrote 5 p.m. there. So that's about the time at the end. And so yeah, starting a little
We're
bit.
like one of the last to load out, unfortunately, because they want to get everyone out of our way. So I think last year was like 5:30 to 6 we were rolling out. And in pre-COVID times, you know, there's the restaurants and bars around that town, so we would go do things. But I don't know what it's going to be like this year, unfortunately. But it will be at least half the size, I know for sure.
Okay. Yeah, so some folks may remember how we've done things in the past. And so yeah, this sounds exciting. I see Colin says I'm up for it, and Robert had mentioned he might be able to earlier. Jim saying sorry, okay. And so yeah, do you want to, so
There's
Steve,
not really a limit. I think we could get a lot of people in there. Sorry.
oh no, that's fine. Let's bring all the family in. This is great. Make it a family affair.
This is partially
cute.
the reason why we got an electric plug-in vehicle.
Yeah.
This ride.
Yay.
What? I really splurged on that electric minivan because I got the one with the fam cam. It's like a little camera on the roof of the vehicle, and you can see every seat, and you can zoom in on one, so I can see exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Which was a really cool. That kind of helped sell it for me. But yeah, if you go to that link, you'll see more of the details. But we're already pre-registered because we had already signed up for 2020 before it got canceled. So we're in it no matter what. And it's just about how many cars want to show up. I think we could do up to like, 10 to 15 easily, maybe more if no one else is there. So they'll let us have the whole street if they can.
Okay. So similar setup
So
as
Colin is signed up. I'll put him down. Is there anyone else who wants to sign up and be there?
so you can of course all send email to our Houston Electric EAA at Gmail email address, and that'll get to Mo that way. Usually it's Kevin who's answering those emails, but of course anything that he sees that needs to go to you, Mo, he'll forward it on to you. So if folks can use that email, which of course is at our website as well, easiest way to get that email. And yeah, I don't happen to see Kevin tonight. He might be off also with a youngster, in his case, grandchild. But yeah. All right. So that's good for that topic. And so Emma, I wanted to ask if there's things that you wanted to bring up. While you're thinking about that, I'll also ask if there's folks with projects. I don't see Robert Powell on, but of course there's other folks. John Atwood, you've got any new lawnmowers that you've converted to electric? We certainly want to hear about those. Or anyone else who would like to speak up about a project.
Hey, David, this is Emma.
Yeah, Emma.
Hi. Yeah, I guess I'll let folks know since last month we had some discussions about backup power to PV systems. I had been in contact with Tesla for a while, probably a little over a month, about the Powerwall 2s, given the issue that we had with the freeze, where I have lots of solar on my roof, but because I didn't have any power, fortunately I only had power out for about 18 hours, unlike some folks that had it out for days. But I wasn't, obviously when the power did go out, I wasn't able to generate any power because my inverters didn't have power. So anyhow, and I actually, my PV system is string inverter, so I couldn't go with like N phase. But anyhow, I was in conversation with Tesla, and initially they said, well, we can't, initially they actually said, oh, you're in Texas. So we, Elon Musk sent an email out saying that they would prioritize people who are affected by the freeze. And so I got excited, but then they came back and told me, well, since you're not installing solar along with the battery, with the power walls, we can't actually put you at higher priority. And I don't need any more PV. So, but then they told me that I could be part of, they have a new program called, it's a direct, I exactly forget what the title of it is, but basically they will send you power walls. And the upshot is that you have to find a certified, and they have a list of certified installers that Tesla works with. And so that's like, if all you want is backup battery, that's your best way to go about it, and to be able to actually have the batteries. Because if you wait for Tesla to, design the system and get it installed, even if you are adding solar, I think it still takes a while. So this is essentially a direct buy program for the power walls. So they'll just ship the equipment to you, and then you just have to work out a deal, I guess, with the installer, who will then take care of the permitting and then the eventual installation. So for those of you who have PV and are interested in it, there's another option out there. So.
Good. Yeah, that sounds like lots of things happening, some positive aspects, some negative aspects to it. But yeah, that would be wonderful to add power walls to your PV system.
And I can connect to what you just said. We had power outage in August 2020, which was just one of the many that in New Jersey we do have when we have storm. And then everybody wakes up and everybody starts talking about the resilience or lack of resilience in New Jersey. The way how, and I also have solar PV system, and I don't have the Tesla Powerwall. But the way how to deal with the situation, and it's temporary, it's just a fix, is that you can have an inverter that you connect to the 12-volt system of your electric vehicle, and you can have reasonable amount of energy that you can provide to your home. It's only one phase, 120 volts. It doesn't solve the problem of the photovoltaic system being down, okay? Because the way how it works, as you know, is that it's synchronized with the grid. It needs the frequency of the grid. So and to kind of work it around and have some, temporarily wiring here and there. No, I tried it. I mean, I didn't because I just give up. Yeah, so if they give you Powerwall, go with Powerwall. If not, then typically the storms are anticipated. Okay, so if there is a storm coming, you fully charge your vehicle, you hook up the inverter and, you know, fridge, sump pump, the essential devices, you can power them, not your AC, definitely not. So
That's good to know your experience there, Stan. Yeah. And hopefully vehicle to grid will get built into some newer EVs coming out. I mean, the old argument was that you have an expensive battery, you're not going to want to use it to you know, run
yes,
something else because that's more cycles on the battery, which, you know, over
and even
time,
the
of course.
manufacturers, they don't like it because when they give you warranty on the battery, they
Mhm.
say, well, it's linked to the mileage, right,
Mhm.
of the vehicle. But if you use the battery without driving the car,
Mhm.
then you're avoiding the warranty, or, you know, they just don't like to enable that. They would have to have different clock for warranty, right? That would
Right,
maybe count, you know, the cycle of the battery or something.
right,
But you know, you are right that from a technological viewpoint, it's perfectly doable.
right.
And,
Well, what,
and it creates opportunity for microgrids improving resilience and whatnot.
right.
So
And as we see the price of batteries come down, that argument
it
that
does,
you're
yeah.
putting more wear and tear on the car battery kind of gets diminished. In particular, if you're really talking more about an emergency situation, not, you know, every night trying to use your daytime solar and using your car battery. But what I was going to get at is that there's been some noise about some of the newer F-150 pickup trucks that are gasoline trucks. They're ones that are currently on the market. This will probably also be when they end up with a fully electric F-150, but they are building them such that it's a hybrid and you are running the gasoline engine of the vehicle. So I don't know that I'd be interested in one of these, but the folks that have bought these have then had this quite large generator, which is technically a part of the drivetrain of the truck. You're using the truck engine, and so therefore you have a full-size gas tank, not just a little 1 or 2 gallon tank like on a generator you might have outside your door. And so folks have been able to, you know, keep their refrigerator and freezer and not lose a lot of valuable food and things like that. Folks that have had these newer F-150s have really, with this big problem all over Texas, as you can imagine, since it covered quite a big area, there were some of these out there. And of those people, some have written that it really helped them out in that situation. Yeah, as we know, a lot of PV systems, even during the daytime, can't, if there's no grid, can't power your house. But somebody's F-150 with this type of a built-in generator system could. And I think that when we get to fully electric F-150s, it certainly would make sense to also be able to, you know, power those essentials at somebody's house. And so that is in effect using your vehicle to give you that emergency power. So, all right, that was really good, Emma. Yeah, thanks for bringing that out to everybody. So I'm not hearing anything from John Atwood, but one other thing that I did want to mention to folks is about Txrx. So that's our location where we used to meet in person. And they are talking about at the very beginning of June having an open house. That's their tentative plan, assuming that people are able to come and so forth. So as I've mentioned before, we are not going to go back to the old 205 Robert Street Txrx location. That's no longer available. The new one on Navigation, I believe it is getting retrofitted to have classrooms and things like that. And they have said that we could use a classroom. So been in contact with Bill Swan about that. And so that's really exciting. So I don't know when we would want to start going over there. I think I would want to first go in person and see the classroom and things like that, know how we could set things up, that it has a workable projector and things that they had in the old classroom. And so maybe at the earliest, the first Thursday in July, if they get started up in June and work the bugs out of their system. And if not July, hopefully soon thereafter. And we'll be able to have some kind of a hybrid, some in person with distancing and some remote folks on Zoom for our future meetings. So stay tuned. We've still got May and June, obviously before July. And if things go on the fastest schedule, and if not, hopefully it won't be too much longer after that schedule. So that's exciting that Txrx has got an open house for themselves planned so that they can start letting people in on a distance basis. And so, yeah, that's all kind of been delayed over a year, because it was about a year ago that we were expecting to move from the old location to the new one, and then COVID happened. So, so I see that Colin has put a link in for letting people know about that F-150 hybrid with inverter. And so I'll look at that one myself afterwards.
Hey, David,
So,
can you
yes.
can you repeat, when is the open house for Txrx?
I'm thinking, I'd have to look back at the email. I think it's the 1st of June, if I'm
Thanks.
not mistaken. And so I'll check and I'll mention it next month for certain.
Yeah, are you thinking to do a, I don't know, try to get folks together to maybe carpool and go there?
Right. Things like
Okay.
that would certainly be good. Yep. Yep. So yeah, we'll see. We'll ease into things, and I think it'll be real exciting when we can see all of our familiar members' faces and see new members' faces and get more folks in Houston involved in HEAA through personal interaction. There's just nothing like personal interaction. So I see Robert Sanchez sent me a direct message. Maybe a project for the national chapter would be to figure demand destruction for coal and natural gas and nuclear, derived electrical production, figure costs fixed and variable for coal and reduced demand via solar panels and going green via Green Mountain and Arcadia, figure megawatt transfer from dirty to clean electricity. So I looked at that before I read it out to everybody. He sent it as a direct message, but I just thought it's a good thought to get out there. I mean, a lot of folks are concerned with where the electricity for their EVs come from, whether it's a home-brewed conversion EV or the latest of whatever is coming. There's so many different companies announcing new vehicles, new pickup trucks, new sedans, new SUVs. Ford Mustang, I guess, is out there in the wild, which reminds me, I wanted to ask folks if anybody knows of somebody with one. So obviously not this month or next month, but at some point. The other thing that you can only do when we get together in person is to see somebody's new EV, like we had done in the past many months ago. So I have not, other than seeing one on a turntable, I have not seen, that was before the pandemic at an auto show. I have not seen the Ford Mustang EV, and I bet there's some other members here that would also like to see one and hear from an owner their experiences and things like that. I mean, there are reviews out there on YouTube and other places, but to actually talk to somebody we know is always nice. So that would be a plus. So I'll just put that word out there to everybody. If you know anybody with a Mustang Mach-E SUV, that would be really good. And so
I saw one driving in the wild, actually.
Oh, you did? Okay. Because I haven't
Yeah,
even
over
Sorry.
in the Missouri City area. I could tell, I knew what it was because it kind of had a look like a Tesla, like a Y or something, but I was like, no, that's no Y. And you could see like the Mustang, the horse symbol on the rocker panel and stuff like that. So it didn't look bad, actually. It looked pretty good.
Good.
Actually, the biggest way you can tell is that the lights look like Mustang lights, the tail lights. But you're like, wait a minute, it looks like a Model Y with Mustang tail lights. So you're like, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. And I see Steve Hanrahan remind me of the exact address of the new Txrx. It's 6501 navigation. That's in the chat. So yeah, if we can get a Mustang Mach-E to a future meeting there, that would be great. So glad to hear, John, that you saw one in the wild, because I have not seen one yet. Just YouTube videos of them. And so that would be great to see. So, okay. And so I also see that Robert Sanchez has told us some more here. Going EV on a massive scale may also prevent recessions. Email me if you want to find out more. That does sound interesting, Robert. I can send a video and a graph. Recessions are usually preceded by high energy price spikes, usually oil. Yes, I remember when I first learned that there's graphs out there that show when the price of gasoline goes up, the odds of a recession going, that line correspondingly matching it is very, very high. There's a direct correlation with the price of oil. So hopefully we can make the US and other economies less dependent on oil, and we can kind of ameliorate future recessions. That's one of the things that also I learned very early on, is that electricity as a fuel for vehicles is much more stable. It doesn't have the violent swings that gasoline has had over many, many decades. Electricity in general is remarkably steady. Now, of course, the mid-February Texas ERCOT grid is the exception when prices go way, way up. But that I think was kind of designed that way by some people who thought that they could benefit from it. So Robert continues on, how many remember the high energy price spikes of the 70s? I remember a bit from the 1979 price spike caused by the Iranian Revolution. Yeah, so that's kind of an extreme, but even less extreme price rises in gasoline have preceded recessions. So, and recessions are generally not fun for anybody. Good on that. So let's see, in my notes here, we talked about Discovery Green and Txrx. The plan that they had originally this year for the fully charged Austin event got pushed off until next year. So no, you haven't missed it if you haven't heard about it, because it was in beginning of February last year. And so we'll obviously be talking about that, but I just wanted to make people aware that if you had thought about it and then out of sight, out of mind, it didn't happen this year, but it is planned for next year. So last year's was exciting. So I think this coming one will be exciting. It'll be in Austin, but at the Palmer Event Center. And of course, with all the EV activity, semi trucks and cyber trucks and things going on in Austin, I think that'll be a place to be. So that'll come up next year. Stan, if you feel like making a trip to Texas, that might be something to come to next year in 2022. And also for our folks from Hawaii, but I think that they've logged off. I'm not seeing their names at the moment. Eric Sweet, I do see your name on there. And if you're doing anything new with batteries, we'd love to hear about that too. I think it's always great to take these big battery packs out of Chevy Volt or any other vehicle and do some new things with them. I don't know if you've set up anything else new, Eric, from last time I talked with you about.
I was just checking the link that somebody posted about the Ford pickup with the capabilities, and that I got distracted with some other things. But anyway, yeah, when there are good conditions, I'll be happy to go to Texas. I've been to Texas in 2008 or something like that, and there was a conference of dental conference in 2000 in Dallas. I remember. I enjoyed it.
Very good, very good. So yes, I can tell you that the last Austin fully charged event was really super. It sold out.
I was that close actually to go there, and I regret I didn't go. But likewise, if you are coming to New Jersey and York, make sure to stop by.
All righty. Yeah, the tickets got sold out for that last event, and then they added more, and those sold out. And I think maybe they added a few more after that. They just figured out how to squeeze in some more people, or figured how many people were coming and then leaving. This was quite a big site, but still you had a limitation. And they had the track there. The cars were going around the track. They had a like a lunch break from all the Porsches and other cars that were typically
was
out
the
on the track.
last of the event that was available before the pandemic, because then
Yes, exactly. It was that very
they
first
have
weekend in February.
fully charged. They canceled whatever they were planning for this year.
Right. Unfortunately, they did. And the other thing about next year's being at the Palmer Event Center, I don't know that they're going to have the ability to do anything on a track right at the event. I don't know if they'll do anything else on a track during that same time frame. But it was nice to see all the EVs, and knew some people that were out there in Tesla Roadsters. There are a number of those out there. And
Yeah.
so,
Hey guys, a little advertisement. Central Jersey Electric Auto Association will have a meeting just like you guys have it today. We will have it next Wednesday, and our main speaker will be Tom Malagany. He's Inside EV's contributor, editor, and he is YouTuber. He is invited very often to other YouTubers such as Alex Guberman. And he's going to talk about new electric vehicles lineup in 2021. He would do review, because he oftentimes he's being asked by the car makers to test electric vehicles and do a review, write a review. So he will talk. It's 6:30 p.m. of our time. You will have 5:30 p.m.
right.
Now link. Yeah. Okay, let me put it in
You have a
the chat.
website that you keep information?
Well, yes, cjeaa.org, like Central Jersey Electric Auto Association, cjeaa.org. And on that website, on the front page, there is a link. The link will get you to Meetup. And on Meetup, when you register, you will see the Zoom link.
Okay.
But if you ever attended our meeting before, we are recycling the link. We use all the same link.
Okay.
And interestingly, our April meeting will be our 13th virtual meeting. So it is the first meeting that we are doing again in April, because because of the pandemic, right? So our first virtual meeting was in April 2020. So this April is actually second April meeting. So
yeah, how time flies.
Pandemic for over a year now. I mean, look, this Easter, right? This is second Easter that we are in pandemic.
Yeah. So yeah, it is crazy, but yeah, I'll sign in for the meeting. As you say, it'll be 5:30 Central Time. Our friends in Hawaii aren't on anymore, but yeah, I'll definitely be signing in myself, and so that'll be good to see what's going on. So I see that Eric Sweet typed into the chat, not much lately. So all right, I guess projects haven't been the main thing for him lately. That's okay.
Hey, this is Emma. Hey,
yes.
I have a question for John Atwood. Hey, John, did you get your solar installed on your house finally? I know it was a saga last time we heard about it.
Yeah, hey, Emma. No, I really didn't hear from them. I think I canceled it. I'm trying to remember when that was, like February maybe. I mean, I didn't hear anything from them. And then all of a sudden they were like, oh yeah, you're gonna need a new main panel for like $3,500. And I was like, I asked you guys that like in the beginning, and they were like, oh no, you don't need a panel upgrade.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I got annoyed about it. I was like, well, I'm gonna wait and see if Biden changes something.
Yeah. Oh, gee,
Yeah.
that's
Sorry
rough.
about that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the thing is that, as I mentioned before, when housing gets built, to just put in what's needed for long term just really makes sense.
Well, my house is pretty old. I
There's
mean, it
other-
wasn't that big a deal. It's just like if they had told me ahead of time, then I could have just gotten it done myself. Because I actually specifically said that to the lady, to the Tesla representative, is I was like, look, if you guys are going to charge me some crazy number, like over $3,000, then I'll just do it myself. And then sure enough, you know, like 9 months later, they're like, yeah, $3,500. And I was like, that's like more than double what you should pay for a main panel upgrade.
Yeah, yeah. So many times we hear the cases where, yeah, they take the easy way out and just up the price to something ridiculous that they know will cover just anything. And things could be done much more reasonably when planned well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course they couldn't do the panels last year, even though I had signed up in the summer. So I gave them 6 months, and they couldn't get the everything done and the install scheduled. So then, you know, next year it goes up because the tax credit's going down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see what's going to be happening.
Am I correct that they were at least able to keep the tax credit at 26% for this? At least for
Right. They did
this year?
extend the year because of the pandemic and people not being able to use it. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So that will help out for people that have
Hopefully,
things.
John, maybe since it's still 26%, maybe this year it can happen.
Yeah, I didn't know that because that was one of my gripes, because Tesla changed my plan and was like, oh, now we're redoing all of your numbers based on 23%, whatever it went down to. And they never came back and told me that, oh, it's never mind, it's back to 26.
Yeah, like these other things like tax day, April 15th being delayed to May 17th, and a bunch of other things that have been, you know, done to help people financially with the pandemic. That was one, was that they were going to keep it at the 26th. But what I'm thinking, I mean, none of us know what's going to get passed by Congress in Washington, D.C., but there are a number of folks that are pushing to, for example, the car makers like GM that no longer can sell cars with tax credits, to get them back under tax credits again, and the PV and other energy infrastructure, things like that. So we'll see what they actually pass. And actually thinking of what's valid in Texas currently, I don't even know the status of the TCEQ. What was it, 2,500 grant? I don't even know, because that's was mentioned before about having to have money in the pot to fund different things that are out there theoretically, things that have been passed, but if there's no funding behind them, they're, you know, might as well not be passed. So you need both steps. I don't know if there's money in the pot in Texas for that currently, or if it's run out again. So also I see Eric is letting you know, John and everyone else, that a mean bass player who knows how to do electrical work, or an electrician who's also a mean bass player, is at that phone number. Okay. Yeah, it's always good to have references of people to do work. It's always helpful. Okay. All right. And Steve Hanrahan, I wanted to actually talk with you at some point in time, not like this month or something like that, but at some point out at Evelyn's Park, I would love to come out there with some cars like we did in the old days and, you know, get folks that live in that part of town over there around Bel Air to see what we're driving.
Okay, I'll touch base with them. I don't know what's going on these days. I don't think they've had any events over there, but I'll contact them and see if they're open to having something like that again.
Yeah, because I think us expressing interest would help. I mean, the time frame isn't that important, but expressing interest so that they know that we would like to come and bring cars. Again, whoever would like to volunteer. And
Yeah.
whenever the time is right, but starting planning early and letting them know we have interest, I think.
Yeah, I just don't know what they're doing, you know, with the pandemic thing and all. And I know they're doing construction over there right now for phase 2, but I think all that's being done in the back of the park, so that wouldn't affect where we normally park the cars.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. But yeah, it does seem that more folks have more interest among the general population as announcements get made by these different car companies about only producing EVs at some point. You know, I think it's one of these kinds of curves that, you know, like an S curve. We know it's slow, 1%, 2% EVs, and then I think it's going to go up rapidly because people are going to say, hey, they're going to stop building gas cars. Do I want to get stuck with one? You know, the carbon taxes may make it hard for me to fuel it. And I think a lot of people are going to want to switch to EVs when we get, you might call it a tipping point, you know, that gets popular, and then the S curve, of course, will go up and dwindle off.
Yeah.
And there'll be some diehards that don't want anything other than what they're used to, just like in the old days, the people who had horses didn't want anything that they weren't used to either.
Right. Those diehard ICE owners.
Yeah. If I can't feed my transportation on the grass growing in the ditch, I don't want that kind of transportation, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's, you know, you never get absolutes. That's why I talk about the S curve, you know, rapid adoption and then dwindling off and so forth. But that's how I foresee it. I mean, you see it's the same thing on adoption of telephones, adoption of black and white TVs, adoption of color TVs, adoption of all kinds of other things, microwave ovens. Yeah, and I don't think that EVs are going to be any different. We're seeing that the purchase price differential is getting smaller and smaller. Already for a lot of vehicles, you can argue that with the lower maintenance cost and lower fuel cost, it can be less. Have been looking recently, I think if you fuel at public stations, it might be about equal to gasoline, but if you fuel at home with electricity, as we know, it can be 1/3 or 1/4 of the cost. So I think that once we get to parity on the purchase price, that a lot more people will just look at their situation and say, hey, if it works, then I don't ever have to go to a gas station again when I'm just doing my normal driving, going home every night. And yeah, so I don't miss going to gas stations. And, yeah, I would love to, when the timing's right, allow us to get vehicles out there at Evelyn's Park and enjoy some nice days out there. It's a really nice park, and you know, we can take turns walking around as well. But okay. So let's see. Mo, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up? Anything financial? I'm trying to think. For Discovery Green, we used some club funds to take part in that, or is that different?
That we actually did it in 2020. We prepaid for 2020, and since it got canceled, we already had our registration for 2021 paid for.
Okay.
The most recent expense, I can't remember what it was, but we still have around $1,300 in the bank. I've gotten some random checks from Kroger and other places for like $20 or $13. So we're not depleting it, but we're also not filling it up as fast as we deplete it on an annual basis. In years past, we've just asked people if they wanted to make donations after meetings, and I took the cash back to the bank account. But I guess we haven't been doing that. So maybe we got to come up with another way for people to make electronic donations and somehow get that routed to the bank account.
Well,
But for now, at least.
Recently, I've been using Zelle to pay folks like a photographer and a couple other folks. And I don't know if you get an opportunity over the next month or two to find out if our club bank account can do Zelle, whether that would be something that, in this case, we wanted to accept, you know, not to, not to pay out, but to accept. Yeah, it's just really convenient. In some ways, it kind of almost seems a little bit, I don't want to say dangerous, but if you type a phone number in wrong and don't check that it gives you the right name back again, you could potentially send money unintentionally to the wrong phone number. But I've only done this a few times and it's been in small amounts, like I say, for some photography. And it's very convenient, works real well. And you do see a name come back after you put a phone number in. And so you can recognize that, yes, that's the name of the photographer or whatever. And so I think for folks giving to our club, whatever number, it can be an email address as well as a number. So if our club's email address, for example, we're tied for accepting money into that account, and Zelle costs nothing to transfer money, it would be a way that people could identify. And of course, the name's right there in the email account. So I guess it's a little bit less risky than with a phone number. People would be able to, if they were desiring to donate a little bit of money to the club or something like that, that might be a way to do it. So if that bank account, if that bank can handle it, that'd be something to maybe check on in the next couple of months.
Okay. I just put it on the calendar. I'm gonna try to call either tomorrow morning or next week. When I was talking earlier about the Pacifica, I mentioned the website. I forgot to put that link in the chat, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Yeah, I could go on and on about that van. I really like it. I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel really good about my purchase now. It was a really tough decision between the hybrid Sienna and the plug-in hybrid Pacifica. And I'm really glad I made the decision I did. So.
Oh yeah, I'm really glad to hear about you getting that for your family. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the 30 miles EV range is sufficient for day to day. So we went on a road trip to Austin, and I think it averaged somewhere around 33 miles per gallon. Mm-hmm. And that was, you know, fully charged when we left, but it was out of EV charge by the time we got past the outlet malls. And then coming back, it was like we got to, I think it's like Seguin or whatever, and then the EV charge was gone. And we got about the same gas mileage coming back, around 33 and a half. But that's pretty decent for a minivan. And and for, you know, getting all the gas mileage on a day-to-day basis through the wall, it feels basically like I have an EV, but one where I don't ever have to worry about range if I want to go elsewhere. So
you just remind me of two other tidbits. One is that when the Chevy Volt came out, being a plug-in hybrid, it came out about the same time as the Nissan Leaf, and they found that folks actually drove more EV miles on Volts than they did on Leafs. And the rationale behind that was because if you have a Leaf, you don't want to get too close to being near zero on your battery. And so you're just going to typically do short runs. You're not going to take it on trips. And they found that with the Chevy Volt, because you know that you're going to switch over to a gas engine, you have no fear of driving it to or beyond the limit of its EV range. And so people would use the full EV range much more than they would on a Leaf. And so actually in terms of, you know, the users had different needs, of course. So I'm not saying one is exchangeable for the other, but just the fact that more EV miles were driven, so i.e. gasoline powered miles were substituted for electrical miles with the Volt than with the Leaf, just because the fact that people were confident and they could go more. And so they use those.
Today's a good example of that for me because I had to run some errands after work. You know, I got to go to daycare. I had to drop something off at the donation side. I had to pick up some food. And I did the calculation in my head, and I said I should have plenty, but I got within 1% of the EV battery being out. But I was like, hey, no big deal. It's gonna pull in and plug her in, and I was that close. But I know in an EV, I would have started freaking out, and I'd have been like, I need to cancel one of these things and
Right,
just go
exactly.
home.
Yep, that's
And
the use case right there. Yep, exactly. And and then the other opportunity that I thought was interesting. So I had a Ford C-Max plug-in hybrid, and it had a relatively short battery range before the gas engine would come on. And I bought it new back in 2014. So that was before you could really buy too many battery EVs. And what I did first was read the user's manual, and it said, you know, change it so many miles, change the oil after every so many miles. I don't remember what that number was, or 2 years, because they figure that that's about the life of oil in the environment that it's, you know, sitting in a crankcase and so forth. And the only times when I changed that oil was when it hit the 2-year mark and the 4-year mark and the 6-year mark. And I remember freaking out. I also needed at the same time, 2 years from when it was new, it needed a safety inspection sticker, you know, needed one in between as well, but it needed one at that first oil change. And when I was at the shop getting those two things taken care of, I mentioned to the person working there, oh, by the way, this 2-year-old car with 14,000 miles on it, it's its first oil change. And his jaw dropped. So I don't know if that was because he was afraid of losing business as more of these kind of cars get on the road, you know, because he makes money obviously from oil changes, or just the fact that he had just read the miles, because, you know, you get the sticker, they have to note down how many miles are on your vehicle as you're getting your safety inspection. And here's a 14,000 mile car getting its first oil change. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know on the Pacific of what time frame. I wouldn't be surprised if they also say oil change so many miles or so much time on the calendar. But that was
a good point. I need to check that, because I do remember seeing the mileage, but I didn't see anything about the time, and it may end up being the time one that I need to remember. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Hey, Mo, with the Chevy Bolt, it would turn on the gasoline engine every once in a while if you didn't use it, you know, to keep the engine in shape and lubricate it. Yeah, it's everyone, because I could get close to, I think, 40 miles on the first Bolt. And most of the time, I think I put gas in it once a year. Do you know if the Pacifica does that too?
I think it does. From what I understand, it's like the engines are almost intertwined. There's like electric engines on the ICE engine, or in it somehow.
Well,
so
typically, I think what they do is they replace the starter motor with an inline electric motor that does the starter function for the gasoline engine, but that's also directly driving the transmission. So they've eliminated one part, they've eliminated the starter, but they put in a motor that is powerful enough to drive the vehicle. It may have some clutching in there and so forth, but that's generally what they do, yeah. And if it does, the computer will say, hey, this gasoline engine hasn't run enough, and we're going to force you to start it just to keep things lubricated.
Yeah, I think it does it automatically, because that's basically what it says that it does. But I don't even get a sense of it turning on or off, because it's just so smooth and quiet. I'm really looking forward to bringing it to the next get together and showing it off. But if anyone knows more technical specs on it, I'm also willing to learn, because, you know, just reading the manual and just learning about the technology that went into the vehicle, that's what sold me. It seems like it's so unique and different, and they decided to do this with the minivan. So that just it really spoke to me, and I love that I can plug it in. It feels like it's like a really cool iPod on wheels, is what it feels like.
Are you charging 110 or 220?
I'm just doing the one that came with it from the factory, so I think that's the 110. It's the level 1 charger. It takes 14 hours, but some days it's like 10 or 12. I don't know what makes the difference. I guess maybe I had some juice in there to start. And I can get a level 2 from Mopar on their website, and I think it's like maybe $200. I don't remember. It knocks it down to 2-hour charge.
Yeah, in general, what I kind of think of is if you were to drive in a mode where you needed to drive and then stop for a few hours and needed to drive and stop and do that repeatedly throughout the day, then it might pay for you to charge a bit faster at level 2. But if you're just going to go home at night and sleep all night long, you've got 12 hours, and it doesn't matter if you've only gotten to 80% charge. I mean, you might use some gasoline the next day, but I think you're doing fine charging at 120 myself. So Stan, you wanted to say something?
Yes, just an anecdote. When you were talking about changing oil after 14,000 miles, you know, I used to have Volkswagen Jetta clean diesel. Okay, that vehicle, I still remember, it has a 10,000 mile change interval because when you put the right oil in it, 10,000 miles. And I remember the last oil change was in 2014. Then in 2015, I learned that there is a scandal. So I refused to change oil. And I was driving on the vehicle for 3 years on, on the same oil until I returned the vehicle to the manufacturer. But I tell you, after 3 years, and I didn't drive too much, okay, because I didn't like the fumes and stuff. So maybe I did 4,000 miles a year. So maybe I was close to those 14,000, as you mentioned. And when I returned the vehicle in 2017, it was 8 years old and it had about 45,000 miles on it. That's too much, right? That's not too much. And the reason is because in 2012, we bought first electric vehicle, Mitsubishi i-HEAA, which has bigger 62 miles electric range.
And Steve Hanrahan has i-HEAA.
I loved it so much that any trip that could be done with the Mitsubishi, with the whole family, 2 adults and 2 kids, we would be doing that trip with the electric car. So we would use the diesel less and less. And then 2015, we discovered that it was actually not even clean, right? So, and because it had only 45,000 miles at point of return, we actually received lots of money from Volkswagen. We received an equivalent of like 75% of initial purchase price after 8 years.
Wow.
Tell anybody. So, and as you started this meeting today, saying that they rebranded themselves as a joke with the Volkswagen. So I think they are doing a good job. It's just it was a punishment, maybe a little bit unfair, I want to say, but hey, you know, we've got financing for Electrify America, right? That's financed through Volkswagen settlement.
Right, right. Well, I think one of the things, Volkswagen, of course, is big in the European market, and European laws have tightened up on grams of CO2 per kilometer quite a bit.
That's
and so
diesels.
all the manufacturers that want to sell into Europe. Yeah,
To close my story, I drove 3 years, last 3 years with that Jetta on without changing oil. And you know what? When I returned it, it was running like Swiss clock perfectly. You know, even the 12-volt battery was not changed over 8 years. You know, so and that's one of the arguments why people in Europe, they say, oh, diesels are great. I don't want to switch to electric. You know, because they're efficient, they have very expensive gas and diesel, right? They are reliable, you know, all those things. you know. So, but anyway, that's what the engines, the European engines can do. 3 years, no oil change. Piece of cake. End of story.
Yeah.
Hey, Mo, FYI, the charger that came with the Chevy Volt and the charger that comes with the Honda Clarity, which is also a plug-in hybrid, they're 110 and 220 volts. They don't tell you that. So I just made an adapter cable to go into 220, and you know, I'm cheating here. And you get, they all work on both 110 and 220. So I'm not, I don't know about the Pacifica, but it's worth looking into. Somebody knows this already on some forum somewhere. They already, you know, they even have a cable made up for it probably. But yeah, they only want to sell one charger for the entire world. You know, they don't want to sell a bunch of different ones, but yeah, you can use the same charger for probably for 220.
And I've heard that kind of thing before
Label?
too. Yeah.
Yeah, if you check the label on the charger, at least for the Bolt, it actually does say that it can do 240 volts.
Okay. Yeah, so you might want to check into that, Mo. Yeah.
Yeah. The Honda Clarity is my daughter has one. It's a great car. And the
For
amazing.
Clarity is a plug-in hybrid.
What's that?
For Clarity is a plug-in hybrid version.
They have an EV version too that I think they only sell in California, but they sold a few of the hybrid plug-in hybrid 50 miles. Unfortunately, when we went to see it, it wasn't charged up in Houston. It was you know, horrible salesmanship.
Oh, one of those situations. Yeah, yeah. We've.
But the car is great. It's a shame Honda isn't more into it.
Right. Yep. So, are you saying something, Stan? I see your lips moving, but I don't hear you. Or Stan is on a phone call or something. I don't hear you now. Your voice was a little weak before, and now I don't hear you at all. I hear some clicking, but okay, I see your hand moving. Your mic got disconnected somehow electronically by Zoom or something. Anyways, we've reached the end of our time. So this was a real good exchange, everybody. So we will pick it up again as far as monthly meetings next month, but we've got the things that we've talked about in between. Steve, did you want to say something else? I see a hand there.
No, that was just an end of meeting applause.
Ah, okay.
I mean, a good meeting applause, I should say.
All righty. So again, this was recorded. If people want to catch what Elizabeth said again, some of the details or something like that, or other details about Discovery Green and so forth. So we will get the things posted to our website. Thanks, Colin. That's always good. I've looked at some things. And so that, yeah, we've got some exciting things with Drive Electric Week, month that we've got here in April. And so that Discovery Green event, I think, will be really good. I think most of us all have learned how to talk and be distanced. And oh, I see another family member is taking part there in New Jersey. All right. Very relaxed family member.
A little chubby one.
Yeah. Well-fed one. Okay. All right. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you either at an event or next month. Okay. Bye-bye.